spent a great deal of time trying to determine which cases are worth investigating and which are not, and I think this one is.
What are some of the more common signs of a haunting, things that show up here as well as other cases you've looked into?
Well, one of the things I was intrigued by were the bears that were found in the middle of the room. And they went out of the room and they put the bears back, they came back, and one bear was found in the middle of the room.
Like poltergeist?
That's right. This suggests a very playful kind of experience, and we come across this a lot. People take their clothes out, they get up the next morning, they're back in the drawer again. Just playful type phenomena.
You think this family is at threat, in danger?
Well, I think there are different types of things going on in this house. I wouldn't think there's one explanation. The bears appearing in the middle of the room is a playful type poltergeist experience, but the scratches on the man's stomach and his arm, and according to his testimony, he was yanked out of his bed. Those are pretty terrifying experiences, and yes, I'm a little concerned about that.
We'll continue to look into it. Parapsychologist Carrie Gaynor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And I will be going back to the Midwest along with Greg Cook and our entire investigative team to see what more we can learn about the Heartland ghost. We'll bring you our findings as soon as possible. Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Recently, we brought you the story of a Midwestern family that's been plagued by bizarre haunting activity. Well, from our initial investigation, the videotape that our Sightings crew brought back was unlike anything we'd ever seen before. We brought in renowned ghost investigator Al Rober to join our team, and along with the crew, Al and I went to meet the family.
Hi, how are you?
The family wishes to remain anonymous. We're using pseudonyms here and concealing the father's identity.
How are the scratches that you had that we saw before? Are they healing?
Well, this is said here scarred. The ones on my stomach are healing up pretty good.
Just 2 weeks before, these bleeding welts materialized on camera during our first Sightings investigation. The tape of that event was analyzed by Carrie Gaynor, world-renowned parapsychologist who was lead investigator on both the entity and poltergeist cases. He asked to view the images of this bizarre event side by side. On the right, a frame of video with a long bleeding welt. On the left, an image taken 8 minutes earlier when our camera first began to roll. There's no welt visible.
The exciting thing for me as a researcher is that the camera didn't pull away. It was there the whole time, and that severely reduces the possibility of any kind of hoax. Most of the cases we come across are playful, mischievous, bizarre, weird, and a lot of them have just normal, natural explanations. This case that involves scratch marks, this seems a little more frightening and something that we should be a little more cautious about in terms of studying the phenomena.
The phenomena in this house, according to the family who lives here, are caused by Sally, the spirit of a 7-year-old child. They believe it's Sally who causes paranormal activity, like lights flickering on and off mysteriously, as seen in this home video.
Thank you, Sally.
Yeah, on the left side.
Family photos have turned up with unusual blurring and discoloration, confounding our photo experts. During our initial investigation, paranormal researcher Howard Heim felt and recorded strange sensations of cold and electromagnetism.
Actually feel like a small circumference about 4 inches in diameter coming straight down.
Sightings camera operator Phil Lapkin was startled when an intense charge of static electricity began swirling around him. Our audio equipment was able to record a snapping sound along the floor and around his legs. On our return to the house, we asked ghost investigator Al Rober to gather additional hard data at the site. His equipment can monitor electromagnetic energy and minute temperature fluctuations. He photographed and examined items that were supposedly touched and, in some cases, burned by the entity.
There's a chemical that's built on this.
Tim?
Yeah.
I would assume from that, Greg, that you are feeling, well, something. Air conditioner's off.
I feel it blowing right through here.
Do you?
Well, a little bit. I'm going to move over here and see if I can feel the same thing, though.
Yeah, now we're in front of a window and an air conditioner that's off.
Right. All right, I definitely can feel a sense of some air moving there. Yeah. Let's sit back down and talk, especially Taylor.
As we continued videotaping, I was not the only member of the sightings crew who seemed to feel a strange sensation of cold air circulating in small, isolated patches. It happened again and again.
Oh, man. That's weird. It's right, yeah, right here. Ooh,
And
boy.
the hair on your arms is standing up.
Right here.
I can see the hair over in this area here.
Ooh,
Just
right here.
Down behind you, too.
In and of itself, the sensation of cold and static electricity was intriguing, but not proof of the existence of Sally. However, the sensations some were feeling more strongly than others were usually followed by physical harm to Jeff.
Lord.
Oh, well, now that's very interesting.
It'd be okay if I sit down for a second.
Why don't you sit down? I can tell that you're losing your breath right now.
Sally, what did I tell you?
Sally, we see you. We know you're here.
Whoever or whatever was responsible for these painful scratches struck repeatedly throughout the day. At one point, new welts began to form on Jeff's stomach. Then, I was shocked to see mysterious welts forming on his forehead.
This whole spirit thing scares me, and it just, some of the things she's done, she's lit fires, and I think, well, if she wants to hurt me, why couldn't she just light me on fire, or whatever she does to some of the other things around here? But yeah, this is as far as she goes.
Al, are you saying that virtually everything that you've seen here today could be explained through psychokinesis or some sort of projection?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Understanding his feelings here and his intense fear. He's very frightened and uncomfortable being thrust into this environment. That's not to say that there isn't a little girl ghost walking around, because in cases when you do have a poltergeist, they seem to draw off the same energies.
What would your advice be to the couple living here?
One of the things I would tell them would be to try to document some more of this. Another thing that I would do, I would certainly recommend them to get rid of the toys in the corner and get rid of any encouragement that is now going on for this little girl ghost.
Whether the source of this bizarre activity lies within Jeff or in an outside entity who craves attention, the result is still unexplainable. What type of energy could create the frightening, diverse phenomena occurring here? Being on site, observing the ghostly activity as it happens, has been a disturbing experience. It's clear that this case merits continued investigation.
And whatever comes of it, we will try and pursue it as openly and honestly as we can here on Sightings, and we will share it with you. We'll be back with more Sightings in a moment. For several months, Sightings has been investigating a stunning paranormal event unfolding in America's heartland. A young family is being plagued by ghostly activity that ranges from the innocuous to the bizarre, and it won't go away. We called in renowned psychic Peter James to see if he could communicate with the entity and make the haunting activity stop. Psychic Peter James says he has had the ability to communicate with ghosts since he was a child. Today, Peter continues to develop his power to speak with and even see what he believes are the spirits of the dead.
Well, the first thing I look for is to visually see if there are any ghosts that roam the area. And if they're there, then they generally make it known or make their presence known. And these entities do communicate with me.
Now, Sightings has brought Peter James into America's heartland to investigate haunting activity we've been following for several months. Peter James never saw any videotape. He knew nothing specific about the haunting or its gruesome effects. The identity of the family was not disclosed to Peter. The husband is also asked to have his identity hidden on our tapes. A Sightings video crew accompanied Peter to the family's 100-year-old house. Before he even stepped inside, Peter saw something.
You know what I sense up there? I got just a glimpse of that upper window of the face of a little girl. And I don't know who lives here. It's a boy, right? But I saw the face of a little girl in that window just now.
A little girl is precisely what the husband described seeing months before.
I walked over to the kitchen cabinet, opened the cabinet, and got out a glass, poured my orange juice. Started to take a drink, and as I turned around, there was a little girl standing not more than 3 foot away from me, just as plain as you are to me now.
Peter never heard this interview. He never saw the sketch. And he didn't know the family called the spirit Sally.
There's a little girl that's standing right there. Right at the top of the stairs.
Hello? Hello?
Look.
Hello? Can you speak to me? Sally? Is that your name, Sally? Sally? Okay.
The family and our sightings investigative team were amazed that Peter James had correctly named the entity. But even more startling was an interview that Sightings conducted later that same day. A former resident of the house revealed that she had also heard about someone named Sally, but at the time she thought it was just a figment of her daughter's imagination.
I lived here about 3 years ago with my 3 children, and we lived here for about 8 months. And the whole time we lived here, my daughter was 5 at the time. She had an imaginary friend named Sally. I'd scold Heather. I would scold her for something, and she would come back and tell me, I didn't do that, Sally did it, or Sally told me to do it.
But the former tenants' encounters with Sally were harmless compared to what happened when this family moved in.
I can tell that you're losing your breath right now.
Without warning, scratches on the husband's body would begin to welt and bleed as our cameras rolled. The mission on this visit was to give Peter James a chance to try to communicate with whoever or whatever was plaguing the family. Would he succeed where parapsychologists had failed?
I'm getting a lot of resistance right here at the door, meaning whatever is in the room wants me out. Speak to me.
Peter had no prior knowledge about the scratching and bleeding phenomena attributed to Sally. So when the husband began to panic during this session, Peter thought it was just nerves.
Really, just now?
When you said, speak to me now,
Yeah.
he felt the cold
Yeah.
fly past him.
And she scratched you?
There, my back's been stinging.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I just...
Don't be frightened. There's nothing to be afraid of. Remember, remember, you're in control here. So don't.
MC.
Ooh.
I heard that electrical shock.
Yes. Let me just right here, right in my hand. Did you hear that? Get right in my hand. It hit me right there. Hello. Easy. I'm not afraid of you.
Was the electrical shock a form of communication? And was the MC a cryptic message from a tortured spirit? Peter James believes that the initials are evidence of more than one ghost in this house.
I do feel, as we speak, that over the years that at least 3 people died in this house. She tells me that there was something with her lungs, with her breathing, and also that she hurt her foot or her...
Sightings searched town records for evidence supporting Peter James's psychic visions. In the Hall of Records, we found this: the death record of a child named Sally, date of death 1905. We also tried to substantiate this vision.
Do you know if anyone medical lived in this house? There was a medical person? Yeah, because I feel very medical about this for some reason.
In a city directory printed in 1903, Sightings discovered that the person living in the house at the time was indeed a physician. And according to city records, he moved out in 1906, just after the death of Sally. Was there a connection? During our investigation, Peter James was drawn to the graveyard, one of the oldest in the town. It was here that he had a vision of a little girl dying of pneumonia and the doctor who couldn't save her. As he wandered among the headstones, Peter James described a small voice calling him toward one particular grave. Here, he felt an overwhelming grief. Here, he said, lay Sally. But the marker was so old and weather-worn, the lettering had disappeared. But when Sightings checked the cemetery's records, we discovered that Plot 1, 4th row west, was the final resting place of Sally Isabel Hall.
Peter James's visit has helped the family understand a little bit more about what may be causing the haunting in their house. But Peter has not been able to stop the scratching and bleeding and terror that is now part of the family's daily routine. Later in our program, details about a new, expanded investigation that Sightings is mounting. From the beginning of our investigation into what we now call the Heartland ghost, we've sought the advice and expertise of the world's leading parapsychologist, Carrie Gaynor. He analyzed our early field tapes, and now, with the growing incidents in the house, Carrie Gaynor himself is traveling to the site.
We brought in electronic specialists and over $500,000 in monitoring equipment that we hoped might pick up any physical manifestations of paranormal activity. Remote-controlled cameras were strategically placed in areas of the home where the presence of an entity had been reported previously by the family and our crew.
Okay, now let's just try to focus. The front focus.
Frequency counters and oscilloscopes were set to monitor any electronic interference. A thermal imaging system was brought in to record any measurable changes in temperature. The camera sees only degrees of hot and cold, producing these eerie images showing red where the temperature is higher, blue where it is cooler. The hope was that this thermal system would provide a visual record of ghostly cold spots. While the monitoring systems were put in place, Carrie Gaynor worked with the family and other eyewitnesses to develop a game plan for his field investigation.
During the last 20 years, I've investigated about 850 cases, and during that time, I have never come across anything like this.
Sightings monitored every part of the house for 24 consecutive hours, while Carrie Gaynor kept vigil with the family by candlelight. And still, the entity was not deterred.
During that time, I witnessed 11 separate attacks in the form of scratch marks on Jeff.
You can see that?
Could you please let us know you're here?
My arm is numb. Yeah.
Our full investigation of the Heartland ghost, next time on Sightings.
Since Sightings went online, your response has been staggering, and no story has generated more email than our series of reports on the Heartland ghost. We heard from skeptics, believers, and many viewers who had good ideas about how to broaden our investigation. So good, in fact, we decided to put them into action when we returned to the house with world-renowned parapsychologist Carrie Gaynor.
For the Midwestern family who lives here, the last 2 years have been a paranormal nightmare. They've asked us not to reveal their true names, so we're using the pseudonyms Pam, Jeff, and their young son, Donnie. When Sightings first came to document the phenomena here, we were stunned to see long, bleeding welts forming on Jeff's body. He believed it was the work of a child ghost the family calls Sally.
I personally want it to stop.
We contacted parapsychologist Carrie Gaynor, whose groundbreaking investigations of the entity and poltergeist cases have made him an undisputed authority in the field.
This is the beginning of the research, and a lot more needs to be done in order for me to really feel comfortable that this is a legitimate case.
So, Sightings returned to the house on 2 subsequent occasions, and each time the pattern of bloody welts appeared on Jeff.
The number one question that friends and relatives that do know of our situation ask, and I'm sure probably every one of your television viewers ask, is why do you stay here? Why don't you just get out? You know, what holds you there? Curiosity. There needs to be more data so that we can know what exactly this is, what causes it, Why do these things happen to certain people, certain places, certain times?
Based on our initial findings, Carrie Gaynor joined the Sightings investigative team on our most recent trip to the Midwest.
Tell me about your fear level in the beginning and how you feel now.
After viewing hours of videotape shot in the field, Carrie Gaynor sat with Pam and Jeff to develop a detailed profile of the ghostly activity. We also put in place an arsenal of electronics, oscilloscopes, frequency counters, and surveillance cameras that would monitor the house continuously. Much of our equipment was concentrated in the nursery, where earlier photographic anomalies had been recorded. Another camera position was at the top of the stairs, where, on a previous visit, psychic Peter James had encountered what he felt was a frightening entity.
I'm getting a lot of resistance right here at the door, meaning whatever is in the room wants me out.
2 cameras were placed in the living room area, where many people had experienced strange events.
Our pictures on the wall are turned upside down. The vacuum will turn off when we're vacuuming. The TV will come back on after we've turned it off. The stereo will come back on after we've turned it off. My son's musical toys will play for no reason.
We were now set to monitor any anomalous activity that might occur inside the house. We turned the family kitchen into a control center. Audio transmitters were placed around the house and separate video recorders assigned to each camera. We also set up a handheld thermal imaging system. Any unusual cold spots would turn the normally red tones of human flesh to blue. During this setup, producer Craig Armstrong had his own encounter.
There it went right again, right over here. But I get this, I get like a cool right here. Right here. It's really weird.
Perhaps it was a premonition of things to come, or a result of what Peter James had felt during his psychic investigation when he sensed death and despair.
I do feel, as we speak, that over the years that at least 3 people died in this house.
Our review of town records confirmed Peter James's psychic impressions. 3 people did, in fact, die in the house. One in 1872, another in 1900, the last in 1918. We unearthed their death records on the eve of our all-night vigil. Carrie Gaynor asked that his investigation continue by low-level lamplight.
All right, why don't you make a request, anything that comes to your mind.
Sally, could you do this for me, please? I'd like for you to show them that you're really here.
No one in the room heard a response, but our videotape recorded a chilling sound. We've asked 2 independent experts to analyze the sound and determine its possible origin. We'll bring you the complete report on their findings later in this program.
Talk about not having much longer. Understand.
During the time that the strange sound was being recorded, only one of 2 oil lamps began to flicker. Although the wick was trimmed, the windows were closed, and the air was still. Then, a few minutes later, Jeff felt a bizarre chill in front of him.
Yeah, we've got a new scratch. Yeah, we got fresh blood here. This wasn't here 2 minutes ago.
It was just one of many scratches that appeared periodically throughout a night of bizarre events. When Pam walked in a specific area at the top of the stairs where many had felt a menacing presence, our frequency counter suddenly and inexplicably jumped from 399 to 575 megahertz. Earlier in the day, in the same area, one of our surveillance cameras picked up large amounts of interference, seen here in slow motion. But this camera was on a closed circuit, and it would be impossible for it to pick up electrical interference. And in the nursery, video signals seemed to drift and then disappear entirely, although there was no break in electrical power or the video cable. After a few moments, the signal returned to normal. The next morning, a sense of calm returned to the house. But for paranormal investigator Carrie Gaynor, it had been an unforgettable night filled with unexplained events.
Yesterday and last evening, I spent about 14 straight hours here investigating this case. During that time, Jeff was attacked 11 separate times. There were 11 separate instances of scratch marks on his body. Some of the scratches were very thin, and some were very thick, welt-like scratches that were really quite frightening. Now, I was sitting here. He was sitting here. He was within a foot or two of me, and I had him under my supervision at all times. If he got up and walked away, when he came back, I asked him to take off his shirt so that I could examine what marks were there to make sure there was no trickery involved. During the last 20 years, I've investigated about 850 cases, and during that time, I have never come across anything like this. I think we've got something very interesting and very exciting here, and really potentially dangerous.
Coming up, is this the sound of a dangerous entity communicating?
I've never heard anything quite like it.
Our startling discovery is analyzed next.
During our most recent investigation into the Heartland ghost, we heard this.
I'd like for you to show them that you're really here.
That anomalous low-level noise wasn't heard in the field by producer Craig Armstrong or any other member of our crew. But back in our Sightings offices, in the midst of an edit session, Armstrong and editor Mark Quinn Anderson heard the ghostly sounds that seemed to come in response to Jeff's plea. We immediately took copies of the suspect tape to two diverse audio experts. Rick Wilson, president of Digisonics, is a forensic audio specialist who works routinely with the CIA and FBI, and has also analyzed black box recordings for the FAA.
We looked for a lot of the characteristics that would immediately identify it as a definitely mechanical sound, as a definitely electronic sound, and those were ruled out. See, one thing that makes this sound interesting and eliminates a lot of possibilities right off the bat is that above about 500 hertz, there's nothing there. There's nothing in this sound. There's a lot of background noise, but that's constant before and after the sound. But when this sound comes in, it's all low frequency, and that's it. And we cannot, in our own bodies, make that sound.
If the sound is not natural, could it be supernatural? For an answer, we turn to electronic voice phenomena authority Sarah Estep.
I've been taping for 18 years, and I've investigated a number of haunted homes, houses, properties, locations, and I've never heard anything quite like it. It sounds more like an energy sound, perhaps put out by the other side. It's interesting that it came right after Jeff asked Sally to please let them know that she was here. And then this low rumbling sound started and built up in volume, an energy sound that perhaps they produced at his request. Very, very interesting.
Is it a ghost? I really have absolutely no way of knowing. I really don't. My best bet is that it's something magnetic. And how that magnetism was introduced is anybody's guess.
I'd like for you to show them that you're really here.
Many people have asked, why doesn't the family simply move out? And in fact, they will be moving as soon as possible. Sightings will continue to keep in touch with the family to see if the haunting activity follows them, or if it remains in the house. Sightings continues to investigate the Heartland ghost, the most compelling haunting case our investigative team has ever encountered. The family has now moved out of the house where they believe a vindictive entity named Sally lives. Before they moved out, they called in a Native American shaman to exorcise the spirit. Then our team returned to the now empty house with psychic Peter James to see if Sally was really gone.
From the outside, little has changed since Peter James first visited this remarkable house last summer. In fact, the house stands today much as it has since it was built in 1872. But this time, the upstairs window was empty. No one peered out on the quiet street in this quiet town in America's heartland. Sally, the child entity from the past that Peter believes is trapped in the present, seemed to be gone. And the family, Pam, Jeff, and Donnie, who tried to live with the haunting power in this house, have moved out. As chronicled in past episodes of Sightings, the ghostly activity began for them when family photographs revealed strange, unexplained images.
This was the room that there were a lot of photographs taken. One was when I was sitting down here, and then two entities showed up. One about in this area here, and then one somewhere in this area here.
After those photographs were taken, the haunting seemed to move upstairs, where the family began to feel an unnatural force at work in their son's nursery.
This room spooks me, to be honest with you. This is where a lot of her activity happens. She's taking toys from that part of the room, throwing them out here to the middle of the floor. She's moved furniture around.
After a few months, the paranormal activity took a more destructive turn.
While you guys were outside, doing an interview outside, there's something we've discovered in here. It just looks like it's burnt, and the rest of the petal is moist still. It's still half alive. But the outside, it's ashes.
And finally, there was the moment before our Sightings cameras when something or someone viciously attacked Jeff.
She's right here with me right now. I'm feeling something really cold shoot around my stomach.
These scratches had appeared just moments before.
He's just went right through my midsection.
Oh my God, look. Look. Oh, look, they're forming. It's forming right there.
She tends to do this to me because I upset her sometimes. And she wants to be noticed, I think, today.
On Peter James' first visit to the home, his psychic impressions centered on the link between a child entity and a former resident of the home who had lived here at the turn of the century.
I feel very medical about this for some reason. A medical person that that had a strange lifestyle.
Peter's accuracy was remarkable. When our Sightings investigative team researched town records from 1900, the city directory showed that the house was occupied at that time by a doctor with a lifestyle that eventually led to his arrest and removal from office as the town's mayor. And Peter believes that while the spirit of Sally, a child entity, haunts the house, her physical body is here, beneath a weather-worn tombstone, and that she was a child the dishonored doctor could not or would not save. Because much of the haunting activity has been reported at night, we conducted this latest phase of our investigation with the aid of night vision lenses.
Okay, we're good.
After so many months, it was the first time our team had been alone in the house with the lights out.
I want to go in this room first. And
a second camera shows what you'd see without the aid of the night vision technology.
our nighttime is their daytime. There's an entity in this room right now, no doubt in my mind. Give us a better verification that you're here. Whoever you are, identify yourself.
What do you hear?
You hear it?
What do you hear? Tell me what you hear.
It sounds almost like a moan.
Yeah, it's a moaning. You hear it?
You hear it, Tony?
I do.
Tony, you hear it?
Yeah. I hear it.
It sounds like it's coming from right behind.
Is this where you are, Sally? Right here? Yes. Whoa, yes. Feel this right here. Or is that from the heater? No. No, it's right here. It's right here. Right here. Feel it. Feel it?
Yes.
Yeah, right here. Look. Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Hello? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Right.
She's right. There we go. Hello. Yeah, that's it. She's here.
Hi, Sally.
There she is. Hi, Sally. Whoa, feel that. Whoa. Woo.
Yeah, right here.
That's very strong right there.
Right here. Yeah, right here.
Here it is. Here it is. Oh my God.
Okay, stay.
Yeah, Sally. Hello.
Feel it? Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Whoa. Whoa. Hello. Easy.
You still feel it?
Yeah, a lot. A lot. Yeah. Come and hold my hand, Sally. Sally?
Peter feels the eerie force leading him down the hallway into the former nursery, where Sally's presence has always been felt most intensely.
Sally? Would you like to play with me and the teddy bear, Sally?
You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. Just burned.
Is this unusual, Peter? Something like this happen?
Yeah, she's, oh, that really burns.
Sally has supposedly burned before. A rose, a bib, but never a person.
Something is burning my face, like right now.
Peter James was visibly shaken by the painful encounter.
Wow. Sally, you be nice.
The team broke for the night, but returned the next morning to find an anxious former resident with an amazing story.
I started watching the show and I couldn't believe it. There was no doubt that it was my house, you know, and I'd spent years here. And they showed the bookcase, and my grandmother had all of her medical books here. This room, which is the nursery, was actually my two youngest brothers. And as I passed through the hall and going by here, a light caught my eye. So I turned and I looked in here. It was right here where the fire happened. And as you can see, there's no electrical outlet or anything. It seemed like it was only concentrated right here. In my memory of it has always been, you know, why did that fire start and how? And so, you know, going back and talking to all my brothers after seeing that first show, every single one of them had, well, what about that fire in Kevin Dillon's room? And, you know, I said, that's what I thought of too. And especially when they said that this is the room that they've had the concentration of Sally being in. And I thought, you know, if she was there when we were there, you know, I kind of had that feeling like, were we being watched all those years? Or
as if to confirm her suspicion that the family had been watched, an eerie cold spot suddenly formed.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's weird. Yeah, it's cold.
Yeah, it's much colder than anywhere else.
It is cold.
What does it feel like to you?
It's like a breeze blowing. It's very cool.
But there's no, all the windows
yeah,
are
the windows are shut.
The heat is off.
And I feel like I'm really hot, so this does feel really cold here.
Well, say hello to Sally.
God dang, that's so weird.
Despite the family's attempt to exorcise the spirit, Peter James feels she is still here.
How can we deny the fact that she's here? And this clearly says you better reconsider your thinking patterns about ghostly activity, because there are two entities here and will remain here, in spite of his attempted exorcism.
In fact, as you will see later in this program, Sally's supposedly vindictive nature was once again painfully obvious as our investigation broadened in the days that followed.
Peter James believes that Sally is still present in the house. And there was other evidence as well. When the former tenants, Jeff and Pam, returned to the house for a surprise visit, something sinister returned with them. And through a live computer hookup with hundreds of Sightings viewers, many of you were able to be there at the very moment of contact. We now return to the house in America's Heartland, which has been the focus of an intensive Sightings investigation. This time, many of you came with us through a live computer forum set up with America Online. In the world's first online ghost investigation, hundreds of Sightings viewers were able to experience the haunting firsthand.
She was clearly dressed in garb that would be worn by a child at the turn of the century.
As Peter James concluded his psychic investigation, the team moved downstairs, where Sightings co-executive producer Stephen Krupnik was leading a computer forum between Sightings viewers and the investigative team. Through a live nationwide hookup, viewers could ask questions, make comments about their own beliefs, and experience the haunting firsthand through the information superhighway. Here, computer users posed questions directly to Peter James.
I would like to know if there's any way to learn how to talk to or contact a ghost.
It takes a lot of trial and error and a lot of nurturing and a lot of just being persistent.
All good things must come to an end. Time is up for this event.
Great.
All right.
Very good. Okay, great. Thank you.
Great job, guys.
The next day, Sightings was online with paranormal investigator Carrie Gaynor. Again, through a computer forum on America Online, viewers were speaking live with Gaynor and the rest of the team. During this computer session, the former residents of the house paid an unexpected visit. Within minutes, Sallie's telltale calling card was visible, and our online audience was experiencing it with the rest of the team.
So did you feel it here or down here? Where did you feel it?
Kind of like all across here.
Oh, the whole face?
Yeah.
The first reaction from the online audience was skeptical.
How do we know this is not a hoax?
Well, I don't know. I'll let you answer that. We got 15 people observing this right now.
In the last 5 minutes, 3 scratches appeared on his body in full view of 8 witnesses.
But those 3 scratches were not the last. Just minutes after Sightings concluded the computer forum, Sallie struck again, and this time with a viciousness our team had not seen before.
All of a sudden, his knees buckled, and he just kind of let out an oh, and clearly something happened. We went up, lifted up his shirt, and there were 2 vicious scratch marks across his back, and it really looked like an attack.
You okay? You still hurt?
His knees even gave out.
Up to this point, the family has asked us to keep their identities and their town secret. But in our next report from America's Heartland, Sightings will bring you both Carrie Gaynor's complete investigation and the true identity of the scratching victim we now call Jeff. This is what we know so far. A 2-story house built in 1872 sits on a tree-lined street in the Midwest. Inside, many people, including members of our Sightings investigative team, have reported feeling anomalous cold spots, eerie contacts with amorphous entities, and inexplicable electrical energy. One man has been plagued by spontaneous bleeding welts that he attributes to a vindictive spirit. What we don't know is why. What is causing this haunting activity in America's Heartland?
I could feel it. How did that happen?
You don't know.
Sallie?
Go on in, walk in there. Walk in there. Oh my God, look. Look. It's forming right there.
I have 2 scratches.
Oh,
there it is.
Look at it.
Would it be okay if I sit down for a second?
Why don't you sit down? Sallie?
Sightings viewers have their own theories. The wounds are self-inflicted, an allergic reaction, or psychosomatically induced. The victim, his family, and many visitors here believe the strange phenomena are caused by a vindictive entity in the house, and that is why this family has moved out. But the empty house is still the focus of an ongoing Sightings investigation. World-renowned paranormal investigator Carrie Gaynor believes this case deserves the same careful attention he brought to 2 previous cases, the entity and poltergeist cases. With the family gone, Gaynor has a unique opportunity to determine if the source of the ghostly activity is the site or the family. Maurice Schrag is an environmental engineer with the Industrial Compliance and Safety Corporation. He was brought in to search for electromagnetic anomalies, temperature shifts,
Between 25 and 30.
abnormal radiation levels, or unusual levels of radon, carbon monoxide, or other gases. Nothing unusual was picked up, but there were still reports of ghostly activity by many visitors to the home, including the owner, a 20-year veteran of the local police department.
My hand got real cold. I mean, it got real cold. I thought somebody was doing something. I looked back both ways, and I asked everybody in the room if they had felt that. And I said, it startled me. It kind of scared me. Did y'all feel that? And I didn't buy any of this. I really didn't until that happened. It happened. And we had felt the room temperature go out, which I figured was a draft in the room. But when it touched me, that was not a draft. Something's going on in that house. It's strange activity. What it is, I don't know.
And so far, scientific equipment has failed to come up with the answer.
We thought we might find something as we took several different kinds of measurements, and we found basically that the readings were no significant deviations.
The lack of scientific evidence in the face of so many personal experiences convinced the family to seek help of another kind. They asked that an exorcism be performed to rid them of the entity.
We were all holding hands, and at one point, my husband would grip real hard. We were told not to let go. Don't break the circle. And he just held on real tight because he was in such pain. It was odd because he's never really felt the pain before. But afterwards, we found out that he had been swiped at with a hand across his back on 3 separate occasions that left, I think it was 11 scratches right across the center upper portion of his back, his shoulder area.
These are the scratches that materialized during that exorcism. And as long as the family stayed away from the house, the scratches didn't return. But during our investigation and an online computer forum with Sightings viewers, the family dropped in unexpectedly. And within minutes, so did Sally.
Whoa! So did you feel it here or down here? Where did you feel it?
Kind of like all across here.
Oh, the whole face?
Yeah.
First, a scratch appeared on his face. Then, moments later, deeper cuts appeared on his back.
You physically felt that?
Yeah, that hurt.
Describe to me again what you felt.
Just a sharp sting. Felt like somebody stabbing something in my back.
You okay?
Yeah.
Still hurt?
No.
We set up additional cameras and monitoring equipment, hoping to capture any further scratching episodes. It was while we were setting up that the victim, who had always wished to remain anonymous, told us he wanted to reveal his true identity.
Sightings has made a habit of coming back to visit you. During that time, you asked them to disguise your appearance. Now you're finally allowing them to use your appearance. What changed for you?
Well, it's something that me and my wife we talked about a lot, and it's a pretty religious town, and I didn't know what kind of feedback we'd get from this type of situation. The more we've talked about it, and since we have been on television a few times, and we've been getting some pretty positive feedback. I mean, the people have accepted it really well.
So people aren't ridiculing you as much like you thought they might?
We get our taunts every once in a while, or somebody will, say something, but it's something that I know what's happening, and my wife knows what's happening, and that's what's important to me.
Now here's a new one right now. Right now. Right here. Brand new. Can anyone get closer?
Yeah, we're pretty close.
I'm sitting right here and I didn't see it.
It's on your side, yeah.
It's on my side. I'm sitting right next to you. This scratch right here, all the way down to here, was not on your face when we came in because we saw this one here. We examined your face, your stomach, your back. Your hands are right here in full view of the camera and in full view of all of us. If one of those hands had gone to your face, I would have seen it. It would have been on that camera. This is truly incredible. Truly incredible. This happened right here, right this moment as we were talking. If this were true, typical poltergeist phenomena, it would follow Tony to his new home. Now, he's only been in his new home a month, so it's still a little bit too early to make that kind of judgment yet. The story's not complete here. We've got a lot more work to do.
Sightings will continue to investigate this groundbreaking case. New tenants are set to move into the house. We'll monitor their experiences and also follow Pam and Jeff into their new home to determine if it is the house or the people who are the focus of this haunting. For almost 1 full year, Sightings has conducted an ongoing investigation into unprecedented haunting activity inside one unassuming house in America's heartland. We've heard from many viewers who have intriguing theories about the source of the haunting activity. So, armed with your recommendations, we now return to the house.
Sally, stop it.
Look, one's starting to bleed.
Oh, why don't you sit down?
There's a little girl that's standing right there.
Sally? Is that your name, Sally?
MC.
Yeah, we got a new scratch. There's an entity in this room right now. No doubt in my mind. Something is burning my face, like right now.
Whoa! In full view of 8 witnesses.
You physically felt that?
Yeah, that hurt.
After our last visit there, I became more convinced that this phenomena was legitimate, that there was something really going on. One of the most unique elements are the scratches, of course. I've been there, I've witnessed them happening while I was observing him.
It's the story Sightings viewers can't stop talking about, especially those strange bleeding scratches. Parapsychologist Carrie Gaynor responds to your suggestions that the bleeding scratches could have a medical rather than a paranormal explanation.
I've been researching a skin condition called dermatographism, and what that is a person can scratch himself and nothing will show up until about 10 or 15 minutes later. And this is very interesting in light of the way this phenomenon is occurring in this case. The references that I've looked at so far do not include bleeding with this skin condition, and certainly in this case, there have been bleeding scratch marks. So this doesn't seem to be a very good explanation for what's going on in this case.
Many viewers also wanted to know more about the child entity known as Sally. Sightings was chastised for overlooking a religious explanation, so our team now includes Franciscan monk Father Ed Anthony.
I would not consider Heartland to be an extreme case. I don't think there's demonic possessions going on. I think what's happening there is perhaps we would maybe call a lost soul or a spirit that is trying to communicate. When you try to communicate with somebody, if they're not listening to you, if they're not paying attention to you, you're going to do all kinds of things to get that person's attention. I think perhaps a spirit would do the same thing.
Many viewers have suggested that the scratching is actually stigmata, which they define as a physical manifestation of Christ's crucifixion wounds.
I don't think Jeff is experiencing a stigmata. I think you have to look at, is there a connection to the doctor who was involved or who was there when this young girl died? There is a part in Scripture that says, and the sins shall be passed from generation to generation upon your children's children's children, however. You know, what happens is it can jump over generations. Things can manifest themselves or things can become present generations later.
I've heard of these things happening, and I think that you can find a psychological reason for it all the time. Not to say that there may not also be a ghost or an entity or some kind of spiritual explanation that goes along with it. But I think there's also a psychological connection.
Psychiatrist Dr. Carol Lieberman agrees with many Sightings viewers that there is a psychological explanation for the haunting activity. Something about Pam and Jeff makes them more susceptible to haunting activity.
Some people believe that ghosts don't just attach themselves, or entities don't just attach themselves to anyone, or don't just come in at any time. That people, the more open a person is, in various ways, vulnerable or open in a positive way, the more they're likely to affect them.
If we just drop our skepticism just for a moment, and as a researcher, I'm not really allowed to do that, but there's a real human angle here, and that is a man's being terrorized. Something is happening to him without his say, without his control, and he's got to be thinking to himself, well, if this could happen, what else could happen?
She scares the living daylights out of me.
If I had to come up with one global explanation to include the whole family psychodynamics, as well as the spiritual entities that may dwell there, I would say that it has to do with a lot of anger directed at father figures for abuses that have gone on through the ages, with the anger at fathers or father figures.
These expert opinions are important. But as long as Jeff and Pam remained in the house, the entities didn't appear to pay any attention to expert opinion. Now, a new family lives in the house. So far, they've experienced no haunting activity.
When I go around town, everyone asks, when I tell them where I'm living, they start talking about it, and they tell me I've heard so many stories, and I was surprised that there's so many people that believe this stuff.
If the activity continues in the house with the new family, then what we have is a traditional haunt. And the people coming into the environment might bring that phenomena out. So it's even possible that somebody could live there and nothing would happen. If, on the other hand, it follows the family to their new home. Then we have a haunt, really, that seems to be centered around an individual, Jeff.
You're being asked to help Sally. The danger sometimes comes in, I think, with things like this, when we refuse to do that. You asked me earlier if there is any physical possibility of any physical danger or harm. I think there could be.
With further investigation, we have a good opportunity to solve this mystery, yes. I think we have a pretty good chance.
While the house is quiet now, both Carrie Gaynor and psychic Peter James believe there are two spirits, one good and one bad. There is also reason to believe that Sally, the so-called bad spirit, may have followed the former residents to their new house. We'll keep you updated.